Hey, so today I am speaking about why I chose craziness and the line between sanity and craziness is often misunderstood. Even the most professional, highly educated psychiatrists, mental health people don't know about these lines, these boundaries, these thresholds. And so sharing a little bit about my story and documenting my journey, my process, so that this information is out there just in case anyone is able to stumble across it, and it can help them make sense of their own journeys and the wider field of mental health, sanity, madness, and everything in between. So, when I was 16 years old, I won a scholarship to a new school. It was a rugby scholarship, and at the time, I was really battling with my sexuality, and I didn't know how to integrate that. I didn't know how to balance that. I didn't know how to reconcile that, and it created this such big schism in my mind, in my heart, in myself, because on one hand I was this masculine, macho guy, young man, rugby player, and on the other hand my sexuality was taboo, interested in guys, and kind of going between both girls and guys, and I couldn't reconcile that. And I remember thinking, like, how do I get out of this? How do I get away from this? And there were two things which came to mind. It was what I was already doing, self-medicating, drinking, drugs, and secondly, thinking in my mind very clearly to myself, if I go crazy, if I have bad mental health, if I get to a position like that, then people aren't going to notice my sexuality. People aren't going to care about my sexuality. And so I consciously planted the seed, decided at that point that better I become crazy, better I have troubles with mental health rather than accepting who I was at that point. And then a few months later, I speak in another video about how I had this dream that I would descend deep down into the darkness and I would get lost. I would go crazy. I would slip down the slippery slope down into the rabbit hole, seemingly of no return, and then I would return back to the surface once I'd done what I needed to do in those depths, and come back and share my knowledge, wisdom, learnings, and the new integrated parts of myself, the new way of seeing myself. And that happened a few months after the initial conversations with myself about going mad, and why that would be useful for me, considering at that point I couldn't reconcile myself. And so, after that my mental health deteriorated over a few years, and by the time I was at uni and finishing uni, things were all over the place, like I've mentioned in other videos. And then it became like the be all and end all was to do healing work, to go to retreats, to connect with healers, to connect with spiritual teachers, to read, to find out more about all these things, to practice, to explore how I could balance myself, my mental health, and all of that. And it's interesting because at that point, it was like very acute mental health. It wasn't serious, deep dives into the labyrinth, the rabbit holes, down in the belly of the whale, although there was troubles and difficulties, and it drastically impacted the way I was living my life. It wasn't serious and profound kind of episodes or deep dives. And at that time, that's when I began to start learning about shamanism and plant medicines and things like exorcism and psychopomp work and even things like black magic and spells and all of those things. And during this period after I finished uni, attended hundreds of plant medicine ceremonies, and I used to pray that I can be like a channel through which all of the badness, all of the darkness, all of the things that others cannot process or experience or integrate move through me. And it's interesting because I started this by saying I couldn't integrate myself, and so I went down this road of madness, insanity, or moving towards that. And yet the prayer became, during the ceremonies, during the quiet contemplations, how can I be a channel through which all of the negativity, the darkness, that which people cannot integrate, can move through me, can be grounded through me? How can I be, a cosmic rubbish dump, so to speak? How can I be a cosmic transmitter, so to speak? How can I be a cosmic black hole, so to speak, for all of this to move through and down through me into the earth? And during ceremonies, I would channel a lot through my body. I'd purge a lot. I know that it would be connected to other things going on in the room. If any of you have done plant medicine ceremonies, you know that the energy kind of fluctuates throughout the night, and usually lots of the purges and the energy come together, and then it's processed through, and a lot of that used to take place through me. And also spending time with the Buddhist monks and Rinpoches. There's a practice that they teach in Tibetan Buddhism where one breathes in all of the black, all of the dark, all of the grey, all of the smoke, so to speak, and with the exhale breathes out all of the love and the light and the compassion and all those things. And it's a very high level practice. Usually people distance themselves from anything like that, any bad, negative, whatever, but this practice is to bring that inside one's body and just to give back the light and the love. And there's like many souls around the world who really live and practice and work this. Maybe not in modern day society, maybe not in cities, but in faraway places, faraway towns, faraway villages, deep in nature. There's people who are just doing their practice, their spiritual work, their spiritual sadhana, on behalf of everyone, on behalf of nature, doing it for something bigger than themselves, devoting themselves entirely and completely to that purpose. And I wanted to become like one of those people. And whilst I was working in the city, in a city, conducting my affairs, in a city in London, this was still my intention. And at that time I was working some projects called like Midtown Medicine Man and Midtown Monk and Urban Monk and all these things, because it was really part of that awakening, that process. Then the next kind of milestone along this choosing madness, this journey to madness, this choosing being crazy, was consciously showing all the bad of myself. So much of our society, our culture, is about showing the good, showing up in situations and the smiles and the everything. And even though some things would be said behind people's backs, even though maybe people didn't mean, even though they're just being overly polite, showing the good. And I decided to show the bad, show all of the dislikes, the discomforts, the tricky, troubling parts. And it's such a contrast, because when people are going around showing all of the good the whole time, if you watch them long enough, you will see the bad slip out or slip up or come out. You'll naturally see that happen. And it was like when I was showing the bad the whole time, the good would naturally just slip out, and anyone who was seeing it, observing it over a long enough period of time, a long enough duration, would see the goodness there. But if you were just seeing the surface, if you weren't taking the time to go deeper, you would have seen just bad. And it's twofold, because it really helps to see people's intentions when one engages and interacts like that. So much of life, of relationship, of people, of culture, of society is, what can I get from you? What can I take from you? How can I use you for my benefit? And if you show the bad, then it kind of sends people off, it scares people off. People see that they can't use you. People see that you're not valuable to them. People see that there's nothing they can take, and so create distance. And this was a large part of my practice for a good couple of years. And most of my initial craziness, most of my initial disputes, most of my initial arguments, most of my initial troubles and turbulence came through this practice. And this was well before, even though mental health was bad, had been bad, but the healing path was ongoing, and I was very much kind of in this deep groove, this deep channel. I hadn't gone like crazy by then. I hadn't really slipped off the cliff edge. I hadn't really gone so far down the slippery slope, the point of no return. And I knew that. And in hindsight, I can see that when I was showing that bad, so much of the troubling interactions, so much of the disagreements, the arguments, were because of that process, not because I actually was crazy. It was more a sense of showing the wildness, showing the savage parts of myself. And was a big situation that happened. I'll speak more about it in another video, but where I was banned from a very big festival here in the UK because I got in an argument with one of the founders around all of this kind of thing, and it caused a big stir in the community, and a big ostracism, and it's still in the process of being reconciled. So, from 16 to 28, I was 12 years planting these kind of seeds, studying these different traditions, these different ways of working with energy, this practice of showing the bad, the watering and nurturing the growing seed and the plant of what I planted at 16, where I said I'm going to go crazy because I can't integrate and deal with all of the parts of myself. And also following the dream I had where I'll go deep down into the rabbit hole and finally resurface. And then in the 13th year, when I was 29, that was when I really actually began to teeter on the knife edge. That was actually a moment where I was dancing between both worlds. I had one foot still in this world and one foot in another world. One foot grounded in this reality and one foot completely in a different realm reality of my own making, but also not just of my own making, because craziness, as much as the delusions, everything is far out, still it's come from a place of relationship, still it's come from a place of me and you, and yeah, I might have made stuff up in between, yeah, I might have fabricated something to deal with that relationship, but that has still come from being grounded in this place. And then in the 14th year, when I was 30, I completely crossed that threshold. I had fallen off the cliff edge. I had slipped down the slippery slope. I had arrived in the place that I didn't even know where I was. I didn't even know that I had left the place where I was. I was so far deep down in the belly of the whale. Everything since 16 had finally fully fruited, fully emerged, fully come to life, and I found myself in all of it but didn't even know I was there. Didn't even know that I had reached the center of the labyrinth, and yet I was right there deep in it. And grace and luck and benediction and blessings meant that I was able to return from that place. Now it's the 15th year, I'm 31, and bringing about that full cycle from 16 of thinking to go mad because it would be easier because I cannot integrate, then the dream of going down the rabbit hole, coming back, being able to transmute, integrate and share with others, and here I am, crafting myself back together, rebuilding myself back together, re-emerging from that labyrinth, studying these traditions, these principles, these energetics, these methodologies, these ways of relationship for over a decade, being tested in the furnace, meeting the dragon, finding the gold, slaying countless minotaurs, countless beasts along the way, and returning out of my own self-prescribed Plato's cave and sharing this out, documenting this journey, knowing that it's a work in progress. And so all of this just hone in on, just to say, despite all of the human aspects, despite all of the challenges, despite all of the feelings of fucking everything up and not knowing how I got here and all of this, the reality is there has been a plan. The reality is that all of this is a form of medicine. The reality is that all of this has been some form of coping mechanism. And the reality is all of this has been some sort of strategy, something that deep down my deeper self, beyond all the layers and the complexities and the schisms, knew what it was, knew what it needed to bring this about. And now I'm here sharing this, integrating this, knowing that I'm now 31, speaking in the same way when I was 16, knowing that this part of the journey, this won't fully come to fruition, what I'm speaking now, till 40, 45, but putting it down on camera to share with you. So that's why I chose to become crazy. That's why I chose craziness. That's why I chose madness.